I learned that as a freelancer, as a photographer, as an artist, whatever you want to call it, you always have to trust your own instinct and you need to be a bit more proactive. The immediate reaction was to do nothing for at least the first couple of weeks. And then eventually, yeah, the urge of leaving the flat, doing something, try to document this historical moment, because obviously we all know that we are living an historical moment and we all living something which is a, a community shared trauma. Mm. So which is actually something that doesn't really happen often. Sometimes individual goes through, I don't know, nearly death experience or illness or something which is kind of quite dramatic and quite impactful on the person, and that might change the way you act or you think or you behave, even if temporarily. And this is the first time that as a community, as actually worldwide, we experience something like this. I thought probably the easiest and best way was for me to just go out and take my camera and see what I was witnessing. And I think one of the biggest changes was like the people were obviously stuck at home and they were spending a little bit more time in their own front garden. So I was actually able to see people, and eventually I started talking to them. And I think we were all a bit desperate to talk to a stranger for a change. And this is how my project started. I was kind of start talking to somebody, and then I was kind of, can I take your picture? What are your emotions? Just started with a very spontaneous interview. And then basically I thought, I think there is a project in there. Photographing them as I met them, where I met them. And the underlying story is what they're dressing, what they're wearing, or, like there's a lot of people with no shoes because obviously we were still at home, even if you were sitting in your front garden, but you were still kind of sitting within your home. And so somehow I think we exported the living room outside for the first time. We lived a little bit more kind of a Mediterranean life where, you just quite happy to sit down on a chair, just seeing the world, the very slow world passing by at the point. In the meantime, I was quite lucky because the Garden Weekend, it was asking photographers if they did or they were developing like any specific project about local communities. So that somehow gave me the push. They liked it and they used it in the magazine. Opening an Instagram account called Evening Growth and photographing posting one picture a day. So I ended up with somehow 70, 69, 70 photos, one per any day of the lockdown phase one. Like never before, I met so many new people in my life. So I probably exchanged views and had conversation with, I don't know, maybe nearly 200 people, I would say. The Instagram account acted as a little tool to glue people together, which for me was actually the nicest and brightest of the things. And then we launched like a Kickstarter campaign, and the Instagram account has been turning into like a book. It's obviously a non-profit book, but it's just like, for me, it's like a little memory to have in the bookshelf and maybe, to look back in 10 years' time. I've been thinking maybe, potentially there could be like a phase two of the book, not associated to the phase two of the lockdown, but maybe, maybe later, maybe in 6 months' time, maybe next year, to try to look back at this time and maybe asking people, so what has changed? And maybe photographing people inside the house at that point.
My name is Yves Salmon. I'm a photographer working commercially and editorially. I also have a documentary practice and I teach photojournalism and documentary photography at a London university. I was going to keep a routine from the beginning. I got up early every day. We were allowed 1 hour a day where the government said we could go out for walks. And so I decided to follow that. And actually going for walks with my camera, which is something that I had stopped doing on a personal level. In my exercise hour, I would take my camera out and just shoot my neighbourhood because actually the weather was really good. So it was just the time to kind of look around at where I lived, think about what I'd been hearing in the news in terms of the government's response and their handling of the pandemic, and making images that actually related to those news stories. I felt prompted to revisit the City of London and photograph locations now absent of people for a project I'm currently working on. First lot of pictures that I did was when life was normal as we knew it. And of course, they were full of people, which is partly what I wanted. Going down there now, it is empty beyond belief. I've loved it because actually I've got a different set of pictures. You sort of get used to it, and then you suddenly see things that actually make you realise the enormity of the situation, that the world has almost stopped. It was almost like life was being cancelled.
Anything can happen, I think, in the world. You can try and stop them from happening. They're usually caused by other human beings, that's the thing. But ask anyone who's had somebody who died of AIDS in the 80s, and it wouldn't be hard to find someone like that it's suddenly just something that isn't human just comes along and wipes out all this kind of quite arrogant kind of belief in we're in control of a system. Well, it feeds back into your art anyway. When you say, you can set out and say, my art isn't political, I separate it, I do this. And then you end up doing political art because all the kind of protesting and stuff has come back into your art. I've been super creative. Didn't for one moment feel that it was affecting me in a negative way. My art's very personal. I was round the corner from my great and great granddad's tailor's shop. Felt a bit of a connection with it, and the streets were empty apart from homeless people who were the ones who didn't want to be or couldn't be rehoused. They put lots of people up in hotels and that, but that kind of condition, often people, you might have mental health issues, or you might not want to go into a hotel and then soften up and stuff like that, and know that you're just going to be thrown on the streets again. You may have issues with the people that you're with. Every day I was doing four drawings or something like that. I got through more and more sketchbooks, so I was having to buy them, I just didn't have any paper. I run out of paper. My pencils were like my dad's pencils when he used to work for the council. They were like a stub, like an inch long, like properly saving money, Every time I do a drawing, I pretty much don't know how I'm going to do it or how to draw. But I have like a skill set I got a lot better at drawing. If you do things more and more, you just get better at them. I think the series of drawings of the homeless people will become big paintings. And I think it's changed my way of, I didn't do a lot of figure drawing, and it's completely changed me. That I think it's survival strategy. I would just do the same probably. The drawings would change. But it's about portability. I believe in portability of ideas and everything. That you can pick something up, put your ideas in a suitcase, and when you have to leave, suddenly you can reopen that suitcase and there's your culture and there's your ideas, and you put it somewhere else. There's always that in the back of my mind. You need portability. If you can't put it in a suitcase, they're not very good ideas. They're too big, overblown, aren't they? You don't put monuments and things like that in suitcases. They just crumble away.